Welcome to Strange Paradigms. In this weekly show, we'll be taking a look into the news and headlines to pick out curious reports of the strange, weird, and mysterious. Anything from UFO news to science advancements, the paranormal, stuff labeled fringe science and fringe phenomena. The topics we cover are fascinating, while some unnerving and others disturbing. But definitely show that we live in a strange world full of strange mysteries. The idea is for you, the viewers, to be able to offer your thoughts and inputs on the stories we cover in the live chat. Each news item we go over in the show, I will put all the links in the description box below once the show is over, as well as chapters on the timeline index. Please make sure to share this video with anyone or groups or forums for those that you think will have the same interest. The growth of this channel has a lot to do with you, my wonderful viewers and listeners. My guest co-host this week is Luis Jimenez, an actor, comedian, UFO researcher, and YouTube content creator with the popular Unidentified Celebrity Review. Let's bring in Mr. Jimenez. Luis, how are you?
I am doing very well. How are you?
You know,
Thanks for
I always
having me on
I
Strange
always enjoy
Paradigm.
speaking with you.
Yeah.
You're just so sweet. And you know what people that don't know about us is that our channels kind of started at around the same time frame,
hmm
and we just became friends right off the bat. Even though you told me that you liked mint chocolate chip ice cream, that did bring down the brownie points, but I can look past that. I
Yeah.
can now. Now I
It's a hill I'm gonna die on. It's my favorite ice cream. I'm sorry,
The only
Christina.
green ice cream I like is pistachio. If it had to be green. But even like,
Mm.
and matcha ice cream. That one's pretty good too.
Michelle loves matcha,
I
so
know.
I
I know.
can maybe
It's
get
so
down with
cute.
some matcha. Yeah, I'd much rather have mint than either one of those.
Absolutely not. It's like toothpaste with chocolate chips. But there's a lot to cover today, Luis. There's a
Okay.
lot to cover. A lot of really interesting articles were dropped
Yeah.
this week. And I will be placing a lot of poll questions with each article. So please get involved in the conversation today, those listening in the live chat, because I'm going to be asking you, the listeners, a lot of questions as well. And that's what this show is all about. It's hearing not only my guest co hosts' input, but also those in the live chat. So let's start off with the first article. I
Well,
found this one
can I just say this real quick before you start with the first
absolutely.
article?
Yes.
Your ability to find this many articles in 1 week is incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
You
called
did
lack of sleep.
you did Oh, that's hilarious. I mean, no, seriously, like the beautiful thing about all of these articles that you sent me and that I read is that I haven't seen these talked about anywhere else except for the Brazilian case.
Right.
Because that was the congressional hearing. That was
That
part
was
of
a
the
big
congressional
deal.
hearing. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to spoil part of the show. But yeah, what are
No,
we
it's
starting
okay.
with?
All
What are
right,
we
we're starting
starting
with the first one. And it's about ancient humans
with?
tamed fire as early as 1 million years ago, study suggests. Okay, from that title alone, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's pretty wild. It seems I mean, I can it seems plausible. Like I think primitive people stumbled on fire probably very similarly to how they may stumble across fire today, forest fire or something like that. And there was a lot more forest, so I'm sure it was a lot more prevalent to have forest fires. And I'm sure they got curious about it, just like they did with everything. And they probably, I could just imagine how you come across something like this. Oh, let's try putting our food on it. Let's
Yeah.
like all the things that they, like that they tried and failed. Like, what happens when you put your hand over it? It burns you.
Oh,
Oh, okay, don't do that. Like maybe they accidentally started a forest fire with it, another forest fire. Obviously they did, right? Like they had to have. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, don't put this near stuff that is dry. Um, so yeah, I find it
Everything was
fascinating.
trial and
Sort of,
error.
like, yeah, trial and error with fire.
Yeah,
Like, can
yeah.
you imagine that?
No, I mean, when you put it like that, I have this one very vivid memory before we get into the article. I was very
Mm,
young and kids love fire. They want to touch it, but they know that they shouldn't. Like they know this. So one day my mom had a candle lighting on the table and I'm like, "Mom, can I touch it? Like, is that okay?" Cuz
mhm.
like, being from a Latin background, you have to ask your parents for permission to do anything. Okay? You need to ask
Yeah,
permission. And she looks at me, she's like, "Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and touch it. I dare you to touch it. Go have fun. Have fun." And I'm thinking,
wow.
I don't want to do it anymore, mom. I'm so sorry. I don't
Really?
want to touch the
That's how
fire.
you that was the lesson in fire? I read a cool
Yes.
book called Everything That Is Bad for You Is Good for You. And the point, like, the author used examples and fire was one of them. This idea of, if you teach a young person how to start a fire, how to gather wood, how to build a fire pit, how to put out a fire, how to cover it up when you're done, the responsibilities of fire, why it hurts, what it's used for, like all of the things, right? That kids are curious about fire. The chances of them then wandering off with some friends of theirs who don't know anything about fire and want to start a fire or play with fire, he would be the one speaking out in the group going, yeah, I wouldn't do that if I were you guys.
No,
Like,
it's amazing, but it's also dangerous on depending on how you use it. So in this
mm,
new study on this article, researchers used a spectroscopic thermometer, and that's in quotation marks, that can
mhm,
detect minute chemical changes analyzed by deep learning algorithms, which can estimate the exposure of stones and fossils to heat. So we had archaeologist Jane Stepka from the Kimball Center for Archaeological Science in Israel and colleagues used this thermometer on flint artifacts from a site in Israel dated between 1 to zero point 0.8 million years ago. And the AI thermometer revealed subtle chemical signatures suggesting a number of the stone tools and pieces of tusk had been heated to a variety of temperatures, some greater than 400 degrees Celsius. And this suggests they could have been in contact with fire. So that was kind of how they got started into this. And I
mhm.
found that really amazing.
Yeah, no,
But
it's cool as
go
hell.
ahead.
Like a thermometer that measures this stuff. That's interesting. It's a new technique, right? Like according to the article, which is a spectroscopic thermometer, detect
Yeah,
chemical changes analyzed by deep learning algorithms, which can estimate the exposure of stones and fossils to heat. Like that's amazing. That's like, I'm sure there's going to be other things too that you could use this for. Um, it'd be great for a turkey during Thanksgiving. That's for sure.
I mean,
To
these are
let you know when it's
crazy new technologies just
yeah.
to look into the ancient past. And while the team cautions that they aren't completely sure, right, how these tools and these pieces of flint got into high such temperatures, thinking that maybe there could have been, wildfires at this point. But
Mhm.
at this very specific location where these tests were conducted, it was an open location. There were clusters of tools and bones, suggests early hominins were actually controlling the fire. And I think that's the most exciting part about all of this is because, with recorded history, it dates back only about maybe 5,000 years ago. So we don't really have a clear understanding of ancient civilizations and human history beyond about 8,000 years ago. So this study finding indicates that humans have a history that go back at least a million years. And so this raises so many questions. So many.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just can't imagine the earliest versions of man not knowing how to tame fire and be able to build some of these, insane structures. And I'm sure a million years ago they were just at the very like cusp of learning how to master this. And I think it relates a lot in the way to like studying, the phenomenon, whether that be UFOs or whatever. um I feel like this is something that we're just kind of discovering like fire, where they're like, oh, what, you could cook on this, like, wait a second, you can use this to melt metal. We can shape that metal to things that kill the guys we don't like. Awesome. Like, there's going to be a lot of different uses for it, and ways to
That's right.
apply it. So yeah, I think it's cool. And I would not shock me if this turns out to be, if this study turns out to be fact, that yeah, we were playing with fire a million years ago. I mean, that makes sense.
And here's the thing. I mean, 1 million years ago, like just
Yeah.
stick onto that number. So oceans have changed so much in the last million years. So how much evidence of ancient humans having sophisticated cultures and civilizations is now buried by ocean sediment? That is a question that I have, and one that I want to hear from the live chat. 1 million years, potentially humans were able to control fire. How does that make you feel? What questions arise in you? Do you question the history that we've been taught in school with just this very one sentence piece of information that I have provided to you from a case study? I mean, I honestly don't know what to say. While it seems, oh yeah, like I shrug the shoulders, like, oh yeah, whatever. If we really just kind of fall back into our history of man, it's like, hold on, excuse me? What happened to that huge gap of where no one knows what happened with humanity? What's going on right there? That's where my question is, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems pretty wild. It's definitely it's what the farthest we go back is Göbekli Tepe, and that's
Right.
12,000 years ago, I think, right?
Yeah, 12,000 years ago. That's right.
So that's nowhere near a million, but I can understand how early primitive man and fire had a very close relationship. Like, you don't need to be building anything, past mud huts or caves. Like, I think a lot of these things were caves. So it wouldn't shock me, if early man was playing with fire. And yeah, if it went back a million years ago, and we can corroborate that with other things, that's an amazing discovery. That blows everything else out of the water, right?
It does. And leading into
cool.
the next article, this changes everything. So at Amazon's Remars conference, the company announced it's working on a feature that can synthesize short audio clips of a person's voice and then reprogram it as longer speech. Hold up. Depends how you use it. That can be either really awesome or absolutely terrifying. So Amazon's senior vice president and head scientist for Alexa, Rohit Prasad, shows off a demonstration where, as TechCrunch described, the voice of a deceased loved one, a grandmother in this case, is used to read a grandson a bedtime story. I'm scratching my head here. While and this conference continues, and it says, Prashad says, look, we want to make memories last after so many of us have lost someone that we love. So that kind of makes this whole situation rather intense. You're like, yeah, there's someone that I love and that I miss, and this would be really interesting. I wouldn't mind my deceased loved one to read me a story, to have a conversation with me or something. But there has been a lot of concerns with this potential new invention dealing with security and deep fake impersonations, though it's pretty unclear how the features voice samples will be stored. But would you want to have something like this, Luis?
Yeah, that's the first thing I was thinking about. And I can tell you this, because I haven't, thankfully, and I hopefully for a while I won't experience the death of like my mom. But I know I don't think I would want her to hear a version of my grandmother's voice. I think that would be, I think that would put her back into a depression that she was in when she was mourning. That would be my guess. You see, like, technology like this, ideas like this, there are parts of it where you're like, oh, that could be useful. That could be great. Like, they use the example of, reading a bedtime story in your voice, so that way you don't have to keep reading the same story over and over every night when you put your
Right,
kid to
right.
bed. Like, that's a great idea. That's cool. Or read them different books in your voice. Like, that could be a huge time saver for some parents.
Yeah, or
um
those that just can't be home to put their kids to bed as well.
yeah,
So like, yeah, there are benefits, but at the same time, talking about grieving,
right.
can this technology be comforting, or is it just going to make the grieving process that much more difficult? Are you going to have these unhealthy attachments because you're attached to this person's voice? You can't have them in person, but you can have this piece of technology in your home, and it can
Yeah,
it can read you whatever you want, like a menu. Like, mom, how do I cook arepas, for example?
right.
My mom would show up and tell me the recipe, and I'll be like, is this creepy or is this
Yeah.
amazing?
Well, it to me, it's growing pains of technology. I feel like the responsible thing to do would be for Amazon to put these in a few thousand homes and say, hey, we're testing this technology. We'll give you these for free. We're looking for your feedback on it. Like, we want to be able to replicate your family's voice. This is the whole idea, right? And then
Right,
you see what happens, and see if you can get some actual mental health professionals and get their opinions on whether or not this would be
right,
helpful in the grieving, or even, past grieving. Like, would this put you back into a state like that? That would be my fear. Would be like, hey, this happened 12 years ago, and now we've got a technology that could recreate, my mom's voice. And I think that would just, I'm sure she'd be really happy to hear, but at the same time, yeah, I don't know, would she develop an addiction to it? Would
well, I
I don't
that
know. It's one of those things that we just kind of have to figure out and see
right,
if
the
it's
hard way.
useful.
And
Right.
it leads me to some what you had just mentioned of, well, let's think about photography. Okay, when it was
Mhm.
first coming out. Now we have all these pictures of our loved ones, those that have passed away, on a picture, and we can stare at it all day. Does that
Right.
affect our grieving process? For some, yes, for some,
That's a
no.
wonderful
This
point.
could be the same case. Also,
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you so much. That is going to vanilla ice cream with sprinkles. It's my
Mm.
favorite ice cream. Freaking amazing.
Damn,
But
vanilla. I don't, it doesn't
but
even
see,
have any
it's
flavor. Like, what are
boring,
you
and
doing?
that's why it's
Oh
delicious,
my
my
god,
dear
I just
friend,
don't
because you can
understand.
put
It's
all
so
the
confusing.
toppings,
It's
sprinkles, M&Ms, strawberries, bananas, pistachios. Because like, if you have like chocolate ice cream or something like that,
yeah.
you can't add all these
I
toppings.
feel
It's just
like
the
if
ice cream.
if you did drink Christina, you'd be like one of those, fishbowl drinks with umbrellas and fruit hanging all out of it, and you'd be sipping on it. And I'm just like a simple, like, you know, martini, or, Jack Neat, whatever. Yeah,
With
I
an
don't know.
umbrella on it, though.
Actually, that analogy doesn't make
I mean,
sense.
with the
Yeah,
umbrella. I also like those ones
now
that
that
had
I'm
like
thinking of
little
it.
knives, like those little swords, and they had like fruit,
Yeah,
like cherries and stuff
yeah, no, those. I mean, look, I'm nothing
for
against those drinks. I
kids.
like those drinks, but I don't know. I just feel like ice cream. There's so many awesome flavors of ice cream, and
There, and we
vanilla
could do a whole show on ice
is
cream.
yeah.
We could.
Anyway,
Dan
Anyway, but yeah, I
says
mean, it's like growing pains. It's growing pains.
exactly. We won't know how it's going to affect us until we try it. And that's the difficult thing, that some people are willing to test and some think it might be too dangerous. But again, it leads me back to the same thing with photography. Dan
Mhm.
says, couple that technology with future AI robots, and then you can start replacing people with doppelgangers. We're going to get into that,
Yeah.
actually, which
Well,
is
real quick, because you
weird.
do make a beautiful point about photos.
Thanks, Dan.
I think if Amazon pitches this idea as that, it's a new version of photographs, but it's on a different spectrum and sound, you know, and just like you said, yeah, I think eventually you'll be able to back that up with AI, and then you've got a hologram of grandma or whatever. Um, I think
It's
if it's put in that context, I now I'm kind of like, okay, I could definitely see how society could transition to a technology like that and be appreciative of it and understand kind of like, oh, this is a photo. Like when I'm thinking about you, I'll lean on this to sort of get me through that whatever, you know, mental emotions you're going
s-
through at that
so
time.
at the end of the day, you just need a really good spokesperson. That's it.
I
You
think
can
so.
sell
Well,
the worst
yeah,
stuff. You can
or I
just be
think
like,
well, no, I think, but it's an amazing point. Like nobody ever thought of the photograph. Like, could you imagine people going, I don't know how this is going to affect society. Like, what happens when the person in this photograph dies? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to look at this and you're gonna go right back into depression or mourning. Like, and
well,
that's not that's it does happen, but I don't think it well, you know, it does happen. It does happen to a point where it is debilitating to people where they mourn and they sit on these photographs forever and they don't get out of that mourning process and it affects eventually their family and their lives as well, right?
and let's very quickly get into that before we go into the next article, because there's so much to
Yeah.
cover. David, thank you so much for the super sticker. Emotions are a huge key in almost anything that we produce, products, inventions, things like that. During the late 1800s, very early 1900s, you had con artists that say, I can take a picture with you and your deceased loved one, because they are communicating with you, because they're always with you. And these people made bank because they were
Mm-hmm.
using people's emotions to the con person's advantage. They're like, oh, I can give you all the money in the world if you can just please replicate, or please give me the person that I have lost, such as this photo. Now we know today it is a double exposure. But at
Yeah.
this time, late 1800s, early 1900s, these people genuinely thought that their deceased husband or wife was right next to them when this photo was taken.
Right.
And it really is taboo. And so when it comes to things such as Alexa or these older types of inventions, things like that,
Mm.
you won't know until you try it. At the end of the
Yeah.
day,
Well,
it
the
just keeps going back to that.
here would be a I mean the thing is if Amazon put these things in your house and just started popping up
Which
holograms
they're
of your
already in
dead
so many
relatives.
people's homes.
No, they're already there, right? But if they just started popping up holograms or voice messages from deceased relatives, and then once the message was over, said, if you want more from your deceased relative, give me $20. You know, we'll charge your Amazon account $20 more, and we'll give you an hour-long conversation with your deceased relative. Then I would be very pissed. You know,
Ooh.
like that would be different. I don't know. I don't think Amazon would ever do that.
Because you
Um,
would buy it with Amazon Prime already.
yeah, I think it's just or it's just, you know, it's like a feature on your iPhone where when you're FaceTiming somebody, you can put a filter and make your face a cow or an owl or whatever. You know, it's kind of like that. It's just a feature of Amazon where, you know, if you want to come home and your Alexa, instead of being a robot, is the voice of your mom, like I think I would probably enjoy that.
Those in the live chat,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah.
Now that you've heard kind of two different standpoints on this new Alexa type of invention, would you get one? Would you not? From what are your thoughts on when you first heard this article to right now, 10 minutes later? Has your
Yeah.
opinion changed, or is it the
Yeah.
same?
No, it's gone back and forth quite a bit. At first, I was like, no, I don't think this is good. And then when you put it in the spectrum of, well, it's kind of like a photograph. When you use that example, I was like, yeah, no, that makes me absolutely flip my opinion on it. I think it actually is a great idea. Now, the more I think of it, yeah, I think it would actually, I could easily see how this would be. I don't know if it was something I don't know if it's a feature I would buy an Alexa for. Like, I don't think
Right.
that'd be the main thing. I'd be like, I'm going to go get that new Alexa because I need to hear my mom's voice. Like, I don't think I'd do that. But if it came with it and it was something I stumbled upon, like while I was playing with it, I think I'd be like, oh, this is cool. That's very
Well,
sweet.
in the live chat, we are getting mixed comments. Some are saying
Yeah.
yes, and some are saying absolutely not. And for myself, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think so. Not for me. Also, I don't have an Alexa, and I don't want one.
I don't have one either. Well, you kind of do. I mean, it's in your
I guess
phone.
the phone. Yeah.
you
But
know.
I don't even have like the Siri stuff on. I don't have an iPhone, but whatever it's called, Cortana.
Yeah.
But
Computers, you got a live stream. They're listening.
always.
They're listening.
Let's
They're watching.
The next article is Night of the UFOs, where fighter jets chased mystery 1,500 mile per hour craft spotted by hundreds of troops. First off, did you watch the Brazil hearing?
I'm gonna watch it this weekend. I haven't
Nice.
had time to sit down and watch the whole thing. No. But I
Well,
have caught, I've read this article, which actually gives you a
yeah.
nice little sort of hunk of it. And I've heard Robert Salas speak on it before, so I don't think he said anything different than what he's said in previous presentations like this. But it is cool.
It is very cool. And in this article in particular, they talk about one specific case, and that's Night of the UFOs, as it has been dubbed present day. So the Brazilian government held its first ever public hearing into UFOs in the Senate on June 24th, and many cases were detailed and discussed, one of them being about fighter jets chasing mysterious bright objects, some of them 300 feet wide, in what has become known as Brazil's epic Night of the UFOs, May 19th, 1986. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know about this case before the hearing, so I found this really fascinating by the amount of witnesses that were able to recount this sighting. But specifically, there were 5 bewildered pilots that testified at seeing 21 objects appear and disappear, while hundreds of troops on the ground also witnessed them. And Air Force chiefs admitted there's absolutely no explanation for this. And the mystery objects were chased by a Brazilian Air Force Mirage, the F-103 fighter jets. And so keep in mind that in present day, 2022, the fastest jets we have go about 2,000 miles per hour. These witnesses back in 1986 stated they were going at least 11,000 miles per hour. That's insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So pilots found themselves looking at objects in front of them that didn't appear on their aircraft radars, and sometimes the other way around, as if the objects played cat and mouse with them. It seems that through the more cases I've looked into, there's a lot of them that mention playing cat and mouse as if they're being kind of playful in a sense. But
Yeah.
Luis, what about yourself? And in the cases that you've looked into and the research that you've done, which is an extensive amount, what are your thoughts on this whole cat and mouse kind of game that has been continuous for quite a few decades?
I can't remember the gentleman's name. It was Secretary of the Navy who said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something along the lines of like, we've got, nuclear threats going on in North Korea, South Korea. We've got, a movement going on in the Persian Gulf with the Taliban. We've got stuff going down in Africa as well. And then you've got these objects that are out there in the ocean, and we go out and they disappear. We come back, they reappear. We go out, they disappear. It's like they're playing like a cat and mouse game, and we're curious about it. We'd like to study it more, but we have the four other things I just mentioned that the Navy really should be focused on. And so it's like they're aware of it, but there should be a whole nother entity that looks at that, because the Navy just doesn't have the time or the resources to do it. But that's what I think of when you say cat and mouse. I mean, it definitely seems like there's an element of that when it comes to, the UFO phenomenon. David Fravor describes something very similar. When he circled the craft was mimicking his movements. When it disappeared, showed up at his cap point. Like it was a lot of weird things that were going on with that were very cat and mouse ish. So yeah, it sounds pretty par for the course. Definitely.
There was one air traffic controller sergeant by the name of Sergio Mota de Silva, and he was the first person to spot the very strange objects. And in a statement, he said he even lowered the brightness of the runway lights, and the objects came towards the airfield. And then when he put them back on to maximum brightness, they moved away. And that's something that I have not heard before. But playing with the people playing with lights in that sense of intense brightness to dim, to bringing down the brightness as well, and the fact that it kind of it went along with that, these craft.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what's going on here. I wish I was there. I wish I was born.
Yeah, that part of the story kind of reminded me a little bit of Close Encounters of the Third
Yeah.
Kind.
I see that.
But instead of lights, it was sounds. I mean, that's a detail that feels like it's real, because for me, the reason to turn down the runway lights is so that you can get a better view of it, sort of kill the light pollution around and see what happens. And then and see if you can get them through binoculars from the air tower. I'm assuming that's why they're bringing down the lights on the runways. And when they do that, it gets closer and they're like, holy cow. Okay, now turn the lights on, see what happens. Let's see if we can see them. And then you turn the lights back on and they skim, they back off. That's a pretty, it just doesn't sound like a detail that somebody in the Brazilian army would make up. Could be wrong. Humans are going to human. But that's an interesting detail. That's for sure.
It definitely is, and that's a big reason to why I brought it up. And now I'm thinking of how much adrenaline must have been going through them, of like, because if you remember going back into your childhood, when you're playing games such as tag or literally cat and mouse, you have that adrenaline running through you. You're having that fun, but in a sense, you're also slightly scared. One, of being tagged, and then you start chasing other people or things like this. So imagine being in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you're going back into that childhood adrenaline, if not even more escalated than you could have ever imagined, when looking at something that they believe is unidentified. And they're going to hold that for the rest of their lives. They're going to remember that moment in 1986 for the rest of their lives. So I'm really happy that they were able to talk about this in their very first public Brazil hearing.
Yeah.
Very
and there
cool.
was 5 pilots, right?
There were,
or was it more than that?
There were 5 pilots,
Yeah.
yes. But there were 21 objects that appeared and disappeared.
Right. That was another thing, is how he said there were, at one point they were chasing him, or one of these pilots. They were chasing one of their planes, and that this was 6 on one side, 7 on the other, and they were in a
Yeah,
V
yeah.
formation. It's wild. I mean, here's one thing that I found that was really wild in the article, and it was says tragically the pursuit of UFOs has also claimed lives, notably that of U.S. Air Force Captain Thomas Mantell. He died after being sent to chase a mysterious object in his fighter aircraft in 1948. Other encounters with the Air Force include a claim that the UFOs disabled weapons at a nuclear base, and then it gets into Robert Salas. But that's Captain Thomas Mantell. That's the first time I've heard that name, and that I've heard that story of a U.S. Air Force captain dying after they chased mysterious objects in his aircraft. I
It's
was like,
it's it's
wait,
a
what?
crazy story. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't, it might, have you heard of that guy? Has anybody in the chat heard of that guy? Because if
I
not,
mean,
I feel like that's a rabbit hole maybe someone should go down.
he went to an elevation too high for his plane as well. And then the theory is that he blacked out because it went too high.
Oh, Captain Thomas Mantell?
Yeah, because
Okay.
his jet didn't have oxygen. Yeah, it's a really crazy story.
Now that you're saying that part of it, it's ringing a bell.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty important detail. So I get
That's
it.
a huge detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that in here. And so I was like, oh, wow, that's insane. Why have I never heard that name? I'm so happy that you knew that. Awesome. Great. Yeah, I think I may have heard of this now. So if that's pretty logical. That would happen in 1948. You go too high, you lose oxygen, you pass out, and then you crash your plane. I feel like that was I wouldn't say common thing, but I'm sure it happened a lot more than it
trial and error.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
everything's trial and error with humans, by the way, like flight, trial and error, fire, trial and error. What was the other article we talked about? Oh, talking to dead ones, trial and error.
Trial and error.
Like we gotta give it we gotta try. Like I feel like that's with everything, right? Like you gotta exactly.
Like children. I mean, we're at the end of the day, we're just small children. But the sightings for this case that we're just now mentioning, the sightings for him must have been so compelling. I mean, he was determined to go after this thing, this craft, and so he knew the risks, and he was ordered to drop down, but he didn't. And again, it's going back to that into that childhood mentality of that curiosity of, I need to know. I don't care what the consequences are. I need to know what I'm looking at, or what is this object. So it's
this is here, I can share my screen if you want. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have the article in there, but this picture to me was like the most interesting one out of all of them. And I'm wondering if there's any sort of modern examples of this photo, because this is what one of the pilots caught.
Right.
When they were flying. And I've never seen anything like that. The closest thing I've seen to that is that Elon Musk thruster creating that spiral in the sky. It kind of almost looks like that a little bit, but obviously not as a spiral. That's a pretty weird picture.
It does. For those, I mean, I wonder how long that exposure was, because it just looks so odd. And for those in the live chat, what do you think about this image? This image is attached with the article, and again, all of the links to the articles will be in the description box below once this show is over. But when I was looking at this, I was rather confused, I won't lie.
Yeah, no, me too. I was like, what the hell is that? And like that's again, I would assume competent pilots in the Brazilian Air Force. It's not like Brazil's known for the best Air Force in the world, but these guys go through training, and my whole thing is, like, what would compel a pilot to stop paying attention to his instruments, whip out a camera in 1986, especially, like, cameras were pretty cumbersome, and take a
Right.
picture of this while they're flying, at speeds, they said, 1,000 miles per hour, in the article. It's just, I don't know, it's a pretty wild thing to do in the middle of a flight.
It
But
does.
that's
And
weird.
it is. And this image has an organic feel to it. So I'm guessing
Yeah.
it wasn't a short exposure, because it just looks, you can just see the flow of it. And
Yeah.
we have here, now I am become
Hookworm.
death. It's, yeah, hookworm.
Hmm.
Yes, I can totally get that. Hyde says, I thought it was a virus at first. It also definitely looks
Yeah.
like that as well. And that's why I'm kind of mentioning it has an organic feel to
Organic
it.
feel to it. Yeah, it does. And maybe it's just a rare occurrence in the atmosphere and Mother Nature that these guys saw, and confused for UFOs. Very possible, because this does have a super organic feel, like you said, like, and people are saying in bacterium, and looks like a wormhole, looks like a hookworm, or it looks organic. It looks like something, yeah, that you'd see if you looked under a microscope. Like, it's a crazy thing. So
It
yeah,
is.
it'd be cool if if there was enough money to sort of go down there and really research the hell out of it and talk to all the pilots, one by one. That'd be a cool film. James Fox or anybody else that's got the budget
Cough,
to
cough.
make that. I'll produce if you want me to. Yeah, that'd be, that's a
Well,
crazy photo. I'm curious to know what the pilot saw when he snapped it,
exactly.
and also, like you said, what was the exposure? What was the camera? What was the film? Like
These
that,
are all
those
these
are
are all
all
very
those things.
important
Yeah,
questions. They're all
very important.
very important, especially when you're dealing with the late 1980s. Now, we're
Yeah.
definitely living in a very exciting time, and Japan is kind of on the bandwagon with all of this, which is super cool. So, right here, we have a Japanese civilian
Mm.
endeavor called the International UFO Lab, established near Mount Sengaumuri in Fukushima, has been analyzing images it has received to determine if they contain unidentified flying objects. And here we are looking at Takahuru Mikami, a 53-year-old editor in chief of monthly occult magazine Mu, who serves as the director of this lab. And here's another picture of some of the other workers for this lab.
Mm.
Does this person look familiar to you?
I mean, what are you? Would I? No, I don't want to play that game.
No. I'm being serious. This man right here, and I'm just realizing this now as we speak. There was another article written of him by Vice that he
Okay.
saw a UFO in Japan. So
Okay.
it's not meant to be derogatory. That was a
Oh,
genuine
okay.
thing.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't think you were doing that. I was just like, because in my brain, I wanted to be. I was. This is a joke, folks, please. But I was like, John Ramirez kind of looks like John Ramirez, but I didn't want to, like, I didn't want to do that. But yeah, I'll be honest with you. This article, when I read it, it was my least favorite one.
Okay.
Just because they talked about how they had 100. What was it? Let me see,
So
125 photos and 24 video clips were confirmed to contain images of like UFOs using the lab's own analytical methods. I want to see those photos. Where are they?
they're
Were
here.
they? Did I
I have
miss
them.
them? Where they are? Yeah. Okay.
So
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 maybe
out of
that's
all
why I'm
the ones
disappointed.
so out of all the ones that they received, they
Yeah.
only gave about 4 to the public,
Yeah. See.
because they're still analyzing them, to my knowledge. So here's
Okay.
one of them. And then, which is a beautiful mountain, by the way. And
Yeah.
then here's a more close up version of another one. So
In
we're
the
getting
same
the
area.
very typical. Yes, as we're
Okay,
getting a very typical saucer-shaped
here's
craft.
why I had an issue. Okay, so I did see the same photos.
Okay.
Here's my problem with this is look at the clouds in the first photo.
Yeah.
Okay, grayish, very almost like cumulus clouds spread
Mhm.
out all over the place. And then look at the clouds in the next photo.
Well, these aren't the same picture on the same day, to my knowledge.
Okay,
These are just
so
like a collected amount of 400 photos, and
got it.
only 4 were released to the public with very little information attached to them.
See, this is why I'm like, okay, I want to see the other photos. I need more
I get where you're
data.
coming
Like
from.
it was just not there wasn't enough facts in this. You know, when you say you've got 125 photos, those are the 2 best photos you got. And I'll be honest, that mountain one, when I look at it, I'm like, it looks photoshopped. It
Well,
doesn't look real.
that's why there's a lab that's going and analyzing
Yeah.
these photos. But again, I do see where you're coming from. It's a very typical shape, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
just another one of these. If it was
Well,
more obscure looking, then maybe.
here's the thing too. It's like it's called a self-proclaimed international UFO lab in Fukushima, which sounds super official, but I have no idea what that means. Why don't you just put it out on the internet and let them figure it out? Because they're really good at breaking down videos and sort of and figuring out what stuff is a lot of the times. I'm always a fan of open sourcing this stuff. Like I think that to me is a lot more useful than saying you're sending it to the self-proclaimed international UFO lab. And I'm like, nah. And then the 2 photos you put out, I'm like, nah. I don't know. Just something about this doesn't feel right. I want it to be real, but it doesn't feel right. And the article is also very vague and very short.
It is. And I agree with you on that one. And I think at the end of the day, when we're dealing with people kind of being very secretive with their pictures and with their videos and with their witnesses, it's just because everyone's being competitive. They all want to be the first to release the best story instead of working collectively and saying, look, I want to work with you. Let's drop this together, or let's make this public, because everyone needs to know. But at the end of the day, for the majority of people, they're working on that ego fix of like, I'm going to drop the absolute best article of the
Yeah.
year on this topic because I am the best. And
Mhm.
that's really unfortunate. But for the most part, that is how people's minds work. And I think that if we were more collective, if we were more open source the way you and I are, Luis,
Mm.
I think we would have been a lot further in the progression of this conversation of transparency, of disclosure, than how we have been doing so far.
Yeah. Well, listen to this, and it sounds like I kind of reread this article while you were talking about that, but it so the International UFO Lab not only hopes to contribute to this field, but also looks to contribute to the revitalization of the community. UFO Forecan saw a rise of 60% in visitor numbers in the year through March 2022. You
Right.
know, and so that's like that makes me go even more like, oh, they're trying to get people to their UFO lab museum thing, and they're telling people that they've got a whole bunch of photos and videos. It's just like, I don't know, man. I want to
But
go to
it
this
does
lab.
also mention in that article that everything that they sell and things like that do go straight to the research. So all
Mm.
that funding goes to the research. As we know, research is really expensive.
I also love the Japanese culture, and I feel like they always take things seriously when they do any endeavor. There's always a lot of pride in sort of what they're doing. So I'm cautiously optimistic on this one.
Which
Yeah.
I think we do need to remain optimistic. And they are the one source in Japan that is trying to elevate this conversation.
Yeah.
They're the one source. So I think while they might try to make money, while their pictures aren't that great, they are bringing this conversation to the public. And I
Mm.
think that is probably their biggest contribution to this conversation, is that they are bringing it to the mainstream. They're like, here, this is what we have. This is what we're going to give you. And I think that's pretty exciting that more countries are openly talking about this for everyone to be able to look at across the world. It's the best part.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, in this next article, It's titled Tech Firms Are Making Computer Chips with Human Cells. Is it ethical? Okay, right off the bat, before we get into it, Luis, those in the live chat, based off of that title alone, is that ethical?
Read it one more time.
Sure. It says tech firms are making computer chips with human brain cells. Is it ethical?
Human brain cells. It depends on where you're getting the brain cells from. So because they're not specific with that, I'm going to go first gut reaction just off the title, no. Because I don't know where the brain cells. Woo, human brain cells? Okay. Where are you getting them? And if they're getting them the right way, I think I think again, this is like one of these things that eventually we're gonna have to get to. Like we're gonna have to try things like this to see if they work. What if doing this solves global warming? I don't know. You're able to put the soul of a human into a machine and come out with a calculation that solves global warming. Would we be yelling that it's unethical? I don't know.
Well, the majority of people in the live chat are saying it is not ethical. And we are going to get into that because, Luis, you even brought up a good point. Are they coming from humans? Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
So this article I was meant to cover last week for last week's show, but didn't happen because of a dental emergency. But it's definitely a strange paradigms focused report. So Melbourne-based Cortical Labs grew groups of neurons, which are brain cells, that were incorporated into a computer chip. And the resulting hybrid chip labeled dish brain works because both neurons and circuitry share a common language, being electricity. So in Cortical's lab's dish brain system, neurons are growing on silicon chips, and these neurons act like wires in the system connecting different components. And the major advantage of this approach is that the neurons can change their shape, grow, replicate, or die in response to the demands of the system. The labs believe its hybrid chip could be the key to the kinds of complex reasoning that today's computers and AI simply cannot produce. And another startup making computers from lab-grown neurons, Koniku, based in Berkeley, California, believes their technology will revolutionize several industries, including agriculture, healthcare, military technology, and airport security. They have coined the term wetware to categorize organic electronics. Other types of organic computers are also in the early stages of development, but with Koniku in particular, they believe they'll be able to create a finished product in 8 years. Just 8. Do you think that's a long time? Or do you think that's like a decent amount of time?
Yeah, I think that's a decent amount of time to sort of study it and see if you can get to that 8-year goal. Again, where these brain cells coming from?
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Here is one of the CEOs of Koniku, which is Nigerian for immortal, which I found a very interesting name.
Yeah.
So companies, they don't actually need brain tissue samples from donors, but can simply grow the neurons they need in the lab from ordinary skin cells using stem cell technology. Scientists can engineer cells from blood samples or skin biopsies into a type of stem cell that can then become any cell type in the human body. However, this raises questions about donor consent. Do
Hmm.
people who provide tissue samples for technology research and development know that it might be used to make neural computers? Do they need to know this for their consent to be valid? So we're dealing with a lot of what ifs here so
Hmm.
far. And again, this is still kind of in like the prototype stages. This is still very new. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing
Well,
over time they'll have answers for this.
it's stem cell research essentially, which
Mhm.
is not something that is allowed to be studied here in the United States on any real level. I mean, it's just theoretical. But I mean, it feel like there's a lot of promising stuff in stem cell research that should be explored, but a lot of people think it's immoral. Um,
It's hard to
but
say.
it's I mean, look, if it's flakes of skin and people know, and by collecting this, of course there would have to be a consent form, right? Like your doctor's gonna be like, hey, we're gonna
Exactly.
run a comb across your arm, collect some skin samples, and send that off to you know to merge with technology and send in an experiment, to see if we can improve humanity, predict cancer, predict plagues, predict whatever. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that they're theorizing you can do with stem cell research. So it's not like the stem cells are coming from dead fetuses or something like that, or the people who just passed away. Like, there's really simple ways to collect stem cells, that aren't, I don't think, unethical. And I always think about Star Trek. Like, if Star Trek is the most realistic sort of prediction of where society's going to be in 1,000 years or whatever, like, we're going to have to figure stuff like this out. We're going to have to try stuff like this,
Yeah.
just as long as it's not, we're not trying stuff and it harms people, or it extracts samples without the knowledge or the consent or the will of people. Of course, I don't support that kind of research, but if it's research that's done properly, I think these are things we're going to have to start talking about. And a lot of these things are going to fail, but some of these things are going to lead through massive breakthroughs. And here's the thing, right? Like, a whole bunch of companies put out cell phones just 30 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have the real sort of conclusion of how holding this to your head and talking on it all day, or having it by your bed while it's emanating all of these signals. Like, we haven't gone through people who grew up on these things. There's no way to study it yet. Like, there's all sorts of technology that's around you that we still don't know what the repercussions or the ramifications. What if in 80 years we find out that these things cause cancer at an 80% higher rate? That we're going to have to figure out how to redo this for society. And how did we go 80 years without anybody telling us this might have been a problem? It takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years for these growing pains to sometimes work their way through society, but we have to try. No doubt these things make life better and easier, right?
I think easier is the key word. Definitely
Yeah,
easier. If I have a
definitely
recipe
easier.
question, I'll be like, how do you make this? And then they
Better
would
is
tell me.
questionable,
Better
but
is questionable.
ask freedom fighters who use Twitter to coordinate and fight, and fight oppression. Like, they use this crazy invention called the internet to do stuff like that. Like, there are good things and bad things that can be used with
And, and,
this
that, and
tech.
that's with absolutely everything. You
Right.
can't have the best of both worlds.
Right.
Deranged Lunatic, thank you so much for the super sticker. And when we're talking about using human cells, they did originally start with mice, using
Mhm.
neurons of mice, but they realized that they're just not as fast as the ones found in humans. And so this leads to another kind of ethical type of question. So might Apple and Google be able to make like lightning fast computers using neurons from our best and brightest minds today? I mean, would someone be able to secure tissues from deceased geniuses like Albert Einstein to make, specialized limited edition neural computers that are faster than
It
maybe
would
the ones that you would make with your neurons.
it sounds like a version of Jurassic Park, but it would just be like geriatric scientific park. I mean, I don't know. That sounds kind of cool. Like, imagine if we took today's best scientists, we did this test where we attached their stem cells to technology, and it spits out some really amazing stuff. Like, why wouldn't we go back to the mosquito stuck in amber, being Tesla or Graham Bell or Einstein, and sort of, take some DNA and attach it to some technology. I mean, if this is sort of the leap that gets us to supercomputing, like, I don't know. Like, these are tough questions, and I think there's a lot of red tape to go through if any government's going to try and pull it off. But I think eventually there's going to be a society, some part of society that tries to do this. And if you can get supercomputing, that can give us or help us develop a lot of vaccines, a lot of progress in health, or a lot of progress in travel and pollution, and all of the issues that we're having here on the planet. Like, how do we provide for people, because the population, overpopulation, like, these are big questions that I think supercomputing would be really handy. And if it turns out that Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye the Science Guy and Michio Kaku throw a couple stem cells at some research with permission and it works, I don't know. That's the thing, right? If it works, I feel like probably a really good idea. If it doesn't work, at least we tried.
Again,
We'll give it a shot.
going back to the beginning, it's trial and error. We just can't run away from that.
Yeah.
Just gotta figure it out the hard way and hope for the absolute best.
Yeah.
So
that's life. That was a space program, trial and error, literally.
That's how we go through life. That's how we learn how to communicate with others, is through trial and error. Was this joke funny? What if I tell it like this? Now it'll be funny. I'll get people to laugh at it. Like, you really just have to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with comedy. But like, I mean,
exactly. And comedy is hard. Stand-up comedy is probably like the hardest thing you could possibly do.
Yes, agreed.
Yes,
agreed. It is a hard, very difficult art form, indeed.
It is. And there are some other rather difficult things, and that's kind of looking outside of our planet, into our solar system, or even outside of our solar system. And now there's the kind of research on long-term liquid water, also on non-Earth-like planets, potentially. Okay, so you didn't like the Japanese article, and that's fine. Did you like this one?
Yeah, I thought this one was cool, just because it seems like they found another tool to help them decipher whether or not a planet has water. And I think it's pretty sort of across the board. Everybody agrees, okay, water, there's usually life around that. So I think it's awesome. And the thing I loved about this is that it had journal references at the end of the article, so like there was actual scientific papers, and they're doing work for NASA.
Yeah, well, Science Daily, they always source where they get their information from. I love Science Daily with like all of my heart, next to Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah, this is a great, concise, easy to read article that was very informative.
Yeah, short and to the point.
Yeah.
So you've read it. Tell us a little bit about it. What's this article all about?
Well, I mean, it's about essentially a biofinder. They've created a new instrument that can find water easier on planets. And so that's That's a good thing. The Biofinder were mounted on a rover on Mars or another planet. We would be able to rapidly scan large areas quickly to detect evidence of past life, even if the organism was small, not easy to see with our eyes, and dead for millions of years, said Mercer. We anticipate the fluorescent imaging will be critical to future NASA missions to detect organics and the existence of life on other planetary bodies. The Biofinder's capabilities would be critical for NASA's planetary protection program for the accurate and no
Oh,
invasive detection of contaminants. Am I reading the wrong one?
You're reading the wrong one. You're reading the next one.
Oh my God.
But we can talk about that one. Totally
Okay.
fine. And then we'll jump back into
You know what? I'm
the one
missing that
about
one in
water.
I thought I pulled up all the articles here. I'm sorry. I
No,
had them in
totally
order. I
fine.
thought I was like ready to go. I was like, oh yeah, okay.
I was like nodding my head and I was thinking, I'm like, this is right,
article.
but this is not right now.
But I feel like this also would find water. Like this would find like remnants of water. But anyway, yeah, going back to the real article.
No, let's stick on this one. We're already on a roll.
That's funny.
Let's continue it. No, because they are similar. I can see the similarities in them in both of them. But continuing with with talking about what we're talking about, continue. He didn't
well, no, it's a non-invasive way to find organic material, to see real quick without putting it under a microscope, without having to burn it, without having to do any of these things. You'll be able to tell whether or not there was organic life there at some point, whether that be a river or plants or a forest or
exactly
or an ocean.
And so people, well, the people that have created this, such as Anupam Mishra, they want the Biofinder to be mounted on a rover on Mars or another planet, and they would quickly be able to scan areas and detect evidence of past life. And so I feel like if at the end of the day, if we just work together, if we just have all these brilliant minds to work together, we can succeed so much faster. And with this Biofinder, you'll be able to see past and present life. And that's what's so exciting about this. So I feel that if it really is mounted onto a rover on Mars or on other planets sometime in the near future, I think that we would be able to progress faster than we could have ever expected with the mundane of, let me scoop up some sand. Now I'm going to put it in my little tiny science lab and then figure it out a long time afterward.
This is feedback in real time. Like you don't have to wait for the analysis of that dirt that the robot's scooping up to figure out, oh, there were plants here. This machine does it without that. So that's pretty cool.
It definitely is. And I'm just excited for the future when it comes to these science advancements, these types of advancements dealing with, like the healthcare system as well, and always advancements on new flavored ice cream also as well. But we're living in such
why do you need
times.
advancemance on new flavored ice cream when you only stick with vanilla?
Because it's always good to like change it up. I like to try them.
Okay.
I like to try them and see if I like it. Like, for example, Bluebell's wedding cake. Don't try it. It is the most horrible flavored ice cream I have ever had from the grocery store. But let's jump back into the article about finding water on planets, which again, they're very similar. So I'm going to share my screen here for people to get a visual. Just kidding. What did I do? Okay, well, I'm just gonna read it, and I messed up on this, but pretty much.
I can bring up the article. I think
that would be fantastic.
Long-term liquid water also on non-Earth-like planets. That one.
Yeah, I'm using Firefox instead of Chrome, and now I have like this weird box on my side, and I don't know how to like shut it off. So thank you for sharing the article. This one's talking about liquid water, and here, what's very interesting, and as we know for a fact, is if you find water, you find life. There is no question there. Absolutely no question. But now what scientists are kind of looking at, or what they're hypothesizing, is that even if the planet is much older and doesn't currently have life or currently have water, there can be signs of it about a billion years ago. With this new piece of technology, they'll be able to find that there was potentially water a billion years ago. And that's something that's incredibly fascinating. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the first place I'd go to with that is Mars, and maybe even
Yeah.
try it out on the moon just for kicks. Um, but yeah, no, this is awesome. Like I said, like I was trying to say in the first breakdown of this article, is that it sort of lets us look out into the cosmos and see, okay, which of these systems, which of these planets have water, and be able to go back a significant amount of time and sort of see the history of that ecosystem from a water's perspective. So that's pretty awesome, man. I think that helps us narrow down which planets might harbor not only life but possibly intelligent life.
Absolutely. And when we are looking at space, our solar system, outside of our solar system, all these exoplanets, at the end of the day, what we're looking for is planets that look like our own, that at some point we'll be able to inhabit and to continue growing or expanding our species. While this is exciting, while we do have that, again, childlike curiosity of wanting to explore deep down, we're going to the survival instincts of, the more land I have, the more my family, my species can continue on. And it's like, it's really exciting. I think this is incredibly exciting to find planets that have water, ones that we didn't even consider could have possibly had water before this paper was released.
Right. Well, I mean, also it kind of gives you a different perspective on what the amount of water you need to sustain it. You know, maybe some other civilizations don't need as much water as say we do, because their environment, sort of deems it. Um, yeah, no, it is cool. It is cool. I mean, too many. It says here, too many. This may come as a surprise. Astronomers typically expect liquid water to occur in regions around stars that receive just the right amount of radiation, not
Right.
too much, so that the water does not evaporate, and not too little, so that it does not all freeze. Study co-author Christopher Mortasini, professor of the theoretical astrophysics at the University of Bern and a member of NCCR Planet S, explains, since the availability of liquid water is likely a prerequisite for life, and life probably took many millions of years to emerge on Earth, this could greatly expand the horizon for the search of alien life forms. Based on our results, it could even emerge on so-called free-floating planets that do not orbit around a star. So again, just putting a different perspective on where we think possibly intelligent life could be, depending on a lot of things, but water, according to this article.
We just keep broadening our horizons on things that we thought were previously impossible are now becoming possible. And this should
Yeah.
be inspiring for absolutely everyone when we say, oh, that's impossible. It's already the case. But you know what
Yeah.
else is really exciting?
Mm.
You know what else I think is super cool? The history of vampires. It
Oh yeah.
really fueled parts of Europe and the United States in the 19th century. And what's very cool is that there is now a vampire box that's going to sell for 13,000 pounds. And I am going to share what it looks like.
It's
This
pretty
is
cool.
really cool. And we're going to get into the history of it. But check out this box that's for auction. So you have holy water, stakes, candlesticks, um, a crucifix, pistol. I think
Hidden compartments, a Bible.
Mm-hmm. You're getting all of
It's
this awesome
it's got
stuff.
pistols as well, but I'm not sure what the pistols shoot. It doesn't get into that in the article, but it does
No,
come with
but
2 pistol-looking items.
and we can only assume that it has to be silver bullets. That's like how the legend goes.
Right? Is it so? I thought silver bullets killed a werewolf.
¿Por qué no los dos? But let's
No,
let's
hey,
let
hey, it also comes with a flask as well.
So, it has to, right? I think it's where the
Yeah,
holy water is.
yeah.
But it's unclear. So the person that owned it was Lord Haley, and it's unclear if he took the threat of vampires or like seriously, or if the kit was ever even used. So William Malcolm Haley, first Barden Haley, was born in 1872 and rose to be governor of the Punjab from 1924 to 1928 and governor of the United Province from 1928 to 1934. He died in 1969 and has a memorial tablet in Westminster Abbey. So, interestingly, also included was Metropolitan Police paperwork apparently registering as an alien enemy in 1915 during World War One. Charles Hanson, owner of the Hanson's auctioneers that's selling this box, said vampires have been part of popular culture for more than 200 years. They are enshrined in European folklore. And then he also states that the publication of John Polidori's The Vampire in 1819 had a major impact and was followed by Bram Stoker's 1897 classic Dracula. However, a belief in vampires and strange superstitions go back even further and persist to this day. The task of killing a vampire was extremely serious, and historical accounts suggested the needs for particular methods and tools. Very cool.
Yeah, when I saw this, I'm like, man, this feels like a cosplay kit a little bit, but for the 1800s, where how people buy, movie props like a Captain America shield or the first, comic books or even like replicas of lightsabers is probably the best example. Replicas of lightsabers, something that was in the zeitgeist at the moment, and getting replicas made of it. And this guy, either he had a super fascination where he's like, I want a vampire box made. Like I wanted to have hidden compartments. I wanted to have all of these things. He probably had a list of things. And to me, it feels like he had it secretly made just to have it. Like, I think it was just one of these. He was one of the first guys to ever make his own cosplay sort of kit for vampires, that he could show off to his friends at dinner parties and things like that, when the time was right. But I don't know. I think that's what I think it is. I think it's really cool. Really, really, really cool.
Well, we are aware that he was a world traveler, but where he got this kit is unknown. And maybe in what you said, maybe he built it himself. That's rather interesting. But to this day, no one really knows how he got this kit or why he was interested in it. Although it was rumored toward the end of his life that he had been a member of a secret occult society, as many of the aristocrats in those days were. And so scholars suspect that the modern conception of this Halloween monster evolved from various traditional beliefs that were held throughout Europe. And these beliefs centered around the fear of the dead, so once buried, could still harm the living. Often, these legends arose from a misunderstanding of how bodies decompose. As a corpse's skin shrinks, its teeth and fingernails can appear to have grown longer. And as internal organs break down, a darker kind of purge fluid can leak out of the nose and mouth, people unfamiliar with this process would interpret this fluid to be blood and suspect that the corpse had been drinking it from the living. That's pretty
Oh,
scary. See, if I wasn't aware of how a body decomposes, I would think the same thing, especially during
yeah.
this time period, the 19th century. There's no doubt there. Scary.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, people, yeah, their sort of knowledge is limited. I don't know, like he was buried in Westminster Abbey, which is like where they bury royals. Like, so he
Right?
was an important part of society.
It's
I
a
don't
big
know,
deal.
just some about this box just screams to me this was just something that he whipped out at parties. He was super mysterious about, he would like this is how he had fun. Like this is to me, this is what it screams. He had it secretly made by someone who is obviously master carpenter, woodworksman, maybe made desks. Because in those days, I know secret compartments and desks
Right. It was a big deal.
or was yeah, they had them in everything. So to me, this was like I don't know, just something that he just. I feel like it was scratching an itch. He was probably super interested in vampires, but this was like the only way for him to express that in a fun, neat, engaging way. Because if you just come out and you start saying I believe in vampires, especially in those days, they might throw you in a nut house, and like for real. Whereas this, you whip this out at a party, and you're like, and it's got a story to it. Like I found this box, my great great grandfather gave it, and it was blah 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 blah. I don't know. It seems like a fun party box, but that's just me. I love it, and if it's real and it actually killed vampires, even cooler.
I mean, like you said, it could have just been for fun to show off that like, hey, I'm super cool and super sophisticated, or he was a legit vampire hunter. It's one
It's
or the other here, and
Yeah, a
I
lot of
like to be
mystery on this one.
optimistic, and I want to
Yeah.
say that he
Does
was
that look
probably a
like the
vampire
face of
hunter.
a does that look like the face of a vampire hunter or a guy who might pull some tricks?
He looks like a guy that would probably be on a dollar bill. If it's me. David, thank you so much. It says, because you brought up vampires, give half of it to Lou. Absolutely. And
Thanks,
this,
David.
those in the live chat, what do you think about his face? We
Yeah.
we got Luis's opinion, that kind of more like a con man kind of vibe. But what about those in the live chat? What do you get from this man's photograph?
He kind of does look like a circus what do they call those guys? Like a circus master. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like if
gosh.
he had a hat and he came out in the middle of a circus and started presenting tigers and stuff, he'd be like, "Yeah, that fits." That's exactly who that's exactly what I thought he'd look like. Yeah, I
That's
don't
so
know.
funny.
I don't know.
That's so funny.
Could be a vampire
Maka
hunter,
says pulling the dollar from your ear. I can
right?
see that. I
Yeah,
can see that.
yeah, yeah. He's definitely a guy who, like, when he was a grandpa, pulled a coin out of the kid's ear and was like, "Oh, look what I've this is behind your ear."
Well, he kind of looks like the guy that played Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah, he does look a little
right? A
bit
little
like
bit.
Robert England.
Yes. Yes, he
Mm-hmm.
does.
Yep.
So, at the end of so those in the live chat, do you think he was a vampire hunter or just a man with a nice toolbox?
Yeah, I think this was fun for him. I mean, it's too perfect. Like, look at the documents. Like, if he really used this thing to kill vampires, they should be able to pull DNA off that wooden stick or something, right?
Good
I
point.
feel like those papers would be a lot more ruffled. They'd be folded somewhere. I don't know. I feel like if it was used to kill vampires, there'd be more wear and tear on it. That box is in really good shape.
Well, like, what
The
if it was just
Bible, look
one?
how, I mean, that's a 200-year-old Bible. Look at the leather on that. It looks great.
Well, like actual vampire stories were kind of rare. They were all over the place. People would tell stories, but like
Mm.
actually encountering one or killing someone that you thought was a vampire, I feel like was more rare. So maybe he only used it once, maybe twice. Or maybe he like lent it to people. What if he was someone like a pimp and he would just kind of be like, "Hey, For 100 pounds, I'll let you borrow this to go kill that
That's a
vampire.
hell of a story. An aristocratic pimp who lends out his vampire killing tool box to random people who want to kill vampires. I don't know. I don't know, Christina. I'm gonna fight you on this one and say no.
Okay, let's get into the last article. We have a few minutes left. This
Right.
one is also, it's an insane story.
Oh yeah.
And let me share my screen, but it's titled Underground Carnivore. The first species of pitcher plant to dine on subterranean prey. What?
Yeah.
Already a crazy title. Okay. I mean, so practically what this title is telling you is that this plant eats its prey using its roots. Okay. That's how crazy this is. And that's why I emphasized underground twice.
Yeah.
Twice. Because this is the first of its kind, the first found species of its kind, a plant that uses its roots to eat its prey. This is crazy.
That is pretty
So,
wild.
Yeah, let's get into this. So, this pitcher plant, it's so cool. So it can digest small insects and small animals in the jug, right? As we're seeing right here, but also in its roots. Now, there are multiple different types of pitcher plants, but some that are really small that only eat like small bugs, and then some that are a bit bigger that can literally eat like small rodents. So if you thought that the Venus flytrap plant was cool, this one is like 10 times cooler.
Christopher Bostic nails it perfectly. He's like, this reminds me of something from Jumanji.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
it does.
I think it's cool, but I think I'd be afraid if the oxygen levels were a little higher, because that plant would be the size of a, like a Volkswagen Bug, and then we would have to be careful of stumbling over that thing, and it'd be eating us like an Audrey 2. Seymour, as Steppenwolf nailed it. Like it's like that is Little Shop of Horrors. You ever seen that movie, Christina?
Shop of Horrors?
Little Shop of Horrors?
Yes.
That's what that plan is.
I mean, look, it's great content to make scary movies, or Jumanji, or if you want to do like another Jurassic Park and have these ginormous plants. Also, yes. But this one, this species places up to 11 centimeter long pitchers underground, where they are formed in cavities or directly in the soil, and they can trap animals living underground, usually ants, mites, and beetles as well. And so the plant forms specialized underground shoots with entirely white chlorophyll-free leaves. In addition to lacking their normal green pigmentation, the leaves supporting the pitcher are reduced to a fraction of their normal size. The pitchers, however, retain their size and often also retain their reddish color as well. Let's say you were just like casually walking through the forest, right? And you're a botanist, and you come across this plant. What would be your first thoughts?
How did it take this long to find this? Like, gosh, how long has it been around? Is that like, how new is this species? I guess, has it been around for thousands of years? We just overlooked it. Is it one of those type of situations, or is this something that nature just sprouted out recently?
Well, it's believed by the people that have found it, and the scientists says that we hypothesize the underground cavities have more stable environmental conditions, including humidity, and there is presumably also more potential prey during a dry period. So, based off of that, it seems like it has a rather specific climate that it lives in. But I mean, if I were just to stumble across one, I think I'd be totally freaking out, like in a cool way. Like, holy crap, this is the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever. I'm also really happy I'm not like 2 inches tall.
Oh yes, yeah. Or like I said, or if like the oxygen was at higher levels, like mosquitoes would be the size of seagulls. Like I'm happy that the oxygen levels are where they are, so this plant doesn't grow any bigger than it is already. But yeah, I mean it's cool. I just again like I'm kind of curious, like if you are a botanist, it's got to be one of the best days in your life to find a new species of plant, right?
Oh yeah,
It's pretty wild.
absolutely.
That's cool.
And for these types of carnivorous plants, they're usually involved in wet, low nutrient sites, including bogs, swamps, water bodies, watercourses, forests, and
Damn.
sandy or rocky sites. To answer your question from a little bit earlier,
Mm,
that's where they can be. That's where these types of carnivorous plants and that's a range. That's a range of plants where they can be found. I had a Venus flytrap plant once and
yeah.
it died within like 2 weeks.
Hmm.
I was pretty sad.
Yeah, I've never had one of those. We got plenty of plants. I don't know if Michelle's ever had a Venus flytrap though. I gotta ask her.
I was, when you're a child, you just want to like put your finger on it and see if it'll
Yeah,
hurt.
of course.
You're like, will it hurt if it bites me? And the answer is no. If you were
No.
wondering, that's in
Yeah.
the live chat.
Yeah.
It
Be
doesn't hurt
brave.
at all.
Be brave.
Be
Keep
brave, but
hanging in
just don't
there.
touch fire, please.
Oh, cool. Dan James tagged us on Twitter with another vampire hunting kit.
Oh,
They were
nice.
not uncommon in the 19th century. Here's one from Nottingham Haunted Museum I saw a few weeks
Nice.
ago. So,
Well, the one that's being auctioned now is for 13,000 pounds. So if you have that much and you really want a vampire kit,
this one is worth looking at.
this one is worth looking at.
It's definitely
It's
worth
super
looking at.
cool.
I would take a look at it. It's pretty sweet.
Well, those are all the articles that we have for this week. And Luis, thank you
Yeah.
so much
Oh
for
my
being my
gosh.
guest co-host today.
That
It was
was
a
a
lot of
blast.
fun.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's always a blast talking with you. And great articles that you picked out. These were fun.
Thank you. On UCR, what's the next
Mm.
show you have?
So next show is Wednesday. We're doing our episode 9 review of
Right.
Skinwalker Ranch, and then Thursday, I'm not sure what we're going to dive into Thursday. Might have a special guest. I'm not. I got to set up some times. It might be this week or the following week. But we'll see what happens in the next few days. Who knows? We might get some big news, and I'm sure we'll probably end up talking about that if that happens. But yeah, we'll see.
And on Wednesday, I'm also going to be joining you on
Mhm.
the Skinwalker review. I'm so excited I was able to move stuff around to be able to make it because who doesn't love the review and the TV show? Mush
Right.
it together. You have like the best concoction
I
ever
think
on the
I think
internet.
man, we had 630 people watching last time. It's
Wow.
crazy. I was like, wow, these are Jimmy Church numbers here. Look at me. Look at me go, Church. Um I didn't expect them to be that popular, but they're fun. Yeah, it's always fun to kind of, we spoil every episode, just FYI. So if you haven't seen them,
Yeah.
don't, and you don't want spoilers, don't watch them.
Spoiler from beginning to end.
But real quick, what was your score? What was your science and entertainment score?
We'll talk about it on Wednesday because this is
Okay.
not
No,
Skinwalker Ranch
I was
related, but
no, I know. I just wanted I just wanted you to go 7-4.
this is 7 and 4.
Yeah, like we're, and
Like
then
that.
we could dive into it on Wednesday.
For those that may not be familiar with you, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Lou Angeles, which is my handle right here at the bottom of the screen. John aside says miss
Hey,
some of
John aside.
that's funny, but the guy underneath him, now I've become death, said fade to Latino. That's hilarious. That's funny. What was I talking about?
Where people can find you online.
Oh yeah. So Lou Angeles on Twitter. You can just Google the Unidentified Celebrity Review, and you'll find all of our stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Easy
thank
peasy.
you again so much. And for those listening, all of his social media links are in the description box below. So make sure to follow, subscribe, like, do all those fun things. And Luis, hang tight backstage. I will
Okay.
talk to you a little bit later. Well, that is it for today's show. And in a minute, I will put the links to the articles we have discussed today. And if you come across cool and strange news stories, send them to me to the email news@strangeparadigms.com. Join me and others in the after show chat on our Discord server. Thank you so much to everyone watching this live, all the super chats, super stickers, YouTube members, and Patreon members. This show would not be possible without you. Please share this video for those that have the same interest as we do. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.